Hey yo, salute to all my subscribers and a special shout out to everybody else passing through. I hope everybody had a happy and safe Thanksgiving. It's been a little while since I've uploaded a new blog on this channel and came through to talk to y'all a little bit about some parenting discussions I've had recently in the past few days. I was recently talking to an old school parent, and the discussion of sex and birth control and kids who engage in sex, maybe too young, during the teenage years when they're not really emotionally ready for it, not really ready for the potential of becoming pregnant at an early age and things of that nature. So this old school parent told me, that when they were raising their kids, that one of their oldest kids brought it to them that they, were thinking about becoming sexually active and to be safe wanted to get on birth control. Now this old school parent was heavily against it, and like most old school parents back during the late 80s and the early 90s, felt that if you participated in educating your kids on safe sex and some of the precautions that you can take should you choose to engage in sex, a lot of old school parents felt that that meant that you were promoting it. I even remember there was a certain point back during those times when the schools started to try and implement things like Planned Parenthood and sex education classes. A lot of parents protested against it because they felt like if you start educating children on, let's not even say children, but teenagers on safe sex and condoms and, how to avoid STDs and HIV and things like that, that was like you giving them the green light to go ahead and have sex. Now, I'm a new school parent. And to all the new school parents in my generation, the new age parents who, I speak to and interact with often, we know, because we came up in that generation, we know how much that is bullshit. Like, it's 100% bullshit. Anything in life, there are risks, anything. And we know this just from going to school. The more research you do about something, the more education you acquire in anything in life, the better off you are, the better equipped you are to deal with those things. Now, let's be real. I have two girls that I'm responsible for raising and a son. When my kids get into, those teenage years when, they start to get involved in boys and girls and dating and all that shit, we know because we've been in school. We're not so far removed from those times when, you start getting into girls and you start getting into boys, and the topics, and discussions of sex, they come up, amongst peers at school and different things of that nature. You can't avoid those. I don't care what kind of parent you are. I don't care if you send your girls to an all-girls school or if you send your boys to an all-boys school. These things are going to come up. It's just a natural part of life. And what I hate is, in this civilized society that we live in, and this current day and age, I hate that sex is vilified as much as it is. It's a natural part of life. For kids who come into the ages, their teen years and their body's going through all those changes, that's physics. That's physiology. That's physiology. There's nothing at all wrong with people who come into changes in their bodies and they start to think about different things, because that's the way that nature designed us to be. It's only this civilized society where we try to put, age limits and restrictions on different things because we want to try and keep our kids sheltered as long as possible. And I understand that. There's no problem with that at all. But we got to stop vilifying our children for natural changes that their body, that nature has designed for them to go through, right? So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, and for any old school parents or people from, few generations ago, explain to me why the idea was that if you teach your kids, like would have been people who are my age now, if you taught us about safe sex, if you taught us about STDs and how to prevent those things, and if you had the conversations with us, why the fuck was the thought process that's like telling us it's okay to go and do it. I don't understand that thought process when it comes to older parents, like old school parents. It's never made sense to me. You know, this person I was talking to, when I had mentioned that, you know, when my kids become the age that I know they're going to be thinking about those types of adult activities, of course, I'll have the conversation with them. Of course, I'll let them know that it's better to wait as long as possible. I mean, shit, I have no problem doing that because I waited. I'm not going to say I waited till marriage, and I don't think that anybody should have to do that because I don't necessarily subscribe to that old school, old ass, Old Testament way of thinking. I just don't. It is what it is, agree or disagree. We're in 2018, and I'm a little bit more progressive and forward thinking than that. It just is what it is. The world changes, and as the world changes, so should you. But I waited till I was 19. I didn't purposely wait until I was the age of 19 and decided, oh, I'm 19, this is what I'm going to do. It just so happened that, you know, that's when it happened. Now, I did consciously wait prior to that just because there were other things that I was focused on throughout middle school and high school. And I actually had, you know, extracurricular activities, you know, that I was really into. I had an after school job. I had things that I was trying to accomplish. So that was just far down on my list. I say that to say, you know, I have every intention of teaching my kids that it is better to wait, not because you got to wait till you're married, not because sex is this super crazy, dangerous thing that you don't want to get involved in. You know, my job is to teach my kids about anything that they'll have to confront or be confronted with in their early adulthood. And when they come to those forks in the road, to make the best decision for them. If it's what you choose you want to do, I would encourage them to have a conversation with me about it so that I can fully educate them on everything that is out there that they can potentially have to deal with as a consequence to engaging in sexual activity early. No, I don't want my children my daughters to, you know, get pregnant early. No, I don't want my son to get a girl pregnant early. Of course not. And you have that conversation. And no, I will not promote, you know, that it's okay for them to go out and have sex at 15, 16, even 17. But I 100% don't agree with not educating them and not saying, listen, I understand that kids don't always listen to their parents. And I understand that, you know, kids don't always see the gravity in the things that they decide to do. That's part of what being youthful and being a child is. It's making those mistakes and learning from those life experiences. But at the same time, this person who spoke to me was like, you know, I wasn't going to put my daughter on birth control. You know, if she was going to go out and not listen to me and have sex, then that's not my job to protect her. She can go out and do that, and she'll have to live with those consequences. And 4 kids later, that teenager ended up having, it's like, how do you not feel, not to say that the parent is responsible for that, but how do you not feel like, or how do you feel like you did everything that you could have possibly done to prevent that situation? And it doesn't make any sense. I will teach my kids, son, daughter, don't matter which, you know, whichever it is, to wait as long as possible, to make sure that you have a connection with the person that you're interacting with. However, if you make a decision, because I can't be with you 24/7, if you decide to make a decision to engage in sexual activity, understand what the possible consequences are. And there's a difference between me feeling like you made a mistake in having sex too early before you were emotionally or mentally ready for it. That's a mistake that you can live with, deal with, and move on with your life with no problems. Outside of maybe, you know, getting too involved in adult type relationships too young. To compound that, though, with not educating you, not telling you what your options are, not allowing you to maybe get on birth control if you wanted to, or, you know, carry condoms if you wanted to. To compound you having sex too early with you possibly becoming pregnant at 17, 18, 16, that's just, I think that's irresponsible of me as a parent. It's my job. You know, it's no different than, you know, it's like with life. You take off the training wheels, but then you still stay close by to provide that guidance. You still stay close by in case your child falls. And I think any old school parent who had that belief, I understand in those times things were different. And, you know, it's no fault against those parents, but you know what? Their way didn't work. See, that's the problem. And I don't think those old school parents realize. You were so set in your ways. You had your opinions on how you wanted to approach sex with your kids, but it didn't work. If it worked, we could sit here and say, you know, the old school way was so harsh. It was so, you know, old school. It was so antiquated. But it worked for the times. It didn't fucking work. And that's why a lot of the kids who I grew up with in high school, and I'm talking as early as sophomore and junior year in high school, were already having children. There are peers of mine who I grew up with, came through school with, who had children who were already sophomores and juniors in high school by the time I had my first child at 26. That's a little bit ridiculous. It's babies raising babies. And I don't have shit to do with parents who tell their children about safe sex and who tell their children, look, if you're going to be insistent on engaging in these activities that I do not want you to, because that's emphasized, it should be, but if you're going to do it, at least be safe about it. I think that's a far cry from saying it's okay to go do it. I promote you to go do this. Here, matter of fact, let me get you condoms so you can go do this. No, it's about understanding that kids don't always listen to their parents. We didn't. And even our parents, when they were kids, did things that I'm sure their parents weren't okay with. That's a natural fucking part of life. That's par for the course with anything. And I'm sorry, but I just, you know, I would hope that any new age parent, any parent, you know, who are parenting children right now in this current generation of kids, don't be so conditioned by the way that you were raised, if you were raised in that way, to be so closed off and so closed-minded to the world of sex and all that it encompasses, that you don't allow your children to be educated. Because kids are very resilient, kids are very smart, far smarter than they're given credit for. And even the kids like me, growing up in my generation, we were so much smarter than we got credit for. And every time our parents were afraid of something, were nervous about something, didn't know how to approach something, they just took a dictatorial approach to it. And it was like, this is what you do because I said do it, and that's it. And when it came to sex, it was, don't go out and get, you know, to the boys it was, don't go out and get any girls pregnant. And to the girls it was, don't come home pregnant. But that can't be the start and end to that conversation. It's a problem. And that's why disproportionately, especially in the inner cities and cities of, you know, poverty, you know, children who had less than, those who came from families who had less than, that's why so many of us in large numbers went out and had children early, and things like abortions and all types of shit revolving around sex, because we were not equipped. Our parents did not equip us with the knowledge that we needed to go out and make the smarter choices. Now, of course, I'm not a part of that. I'm not a part of that statistic, because I chose not to be, because I did have a sex ed class. I did learn about things like STDs. I did learn about things like, you know, unplanned pregnancies and how that could ruin your life too early. So I made a decision, a conscious decision for myself not to engage in those activities. That had nothing to do with my parents simply saying, oh, don't get anybody pregnant. That shit wasn't effective. I can speak to that because I was that kid who was told that and was not provided any other information. But in sex ed class, I was. In health class, I was. And, you know, there was research that you can do even back then, and even though the internet wasn't what it was now and there was no Google and things like that, you know, I still availed myself of the information that I needed to make the smartest decision. And I was only going to get involved with girls who I felt like were on a level with a connection with me that I wanted to take that next step. And all kids aren't going to be that mature in how they approach sex. Of course not. And most kids are not going to listen to their parents if they tell them to wait. So at least be willing to provide the training wheels to your children, and at least be willing to say, okay, to prepare for the scenario in which you have that conversation. You are open-minded enough to talk to them about it. And they still choose to make that decision, whether they consult with you beforehand or not. At least give them options so that them having sex too early isn't coupled and compounded with them coming home pregnant or them getting someone else's daughter pregnant. And there's never going to be 100% chance, because even birth control is not 100%. Condoms are not 100%. The only thing that's 100% is abstinence. But we know that the majority of the children, are coming into those phases in their lives where their hormones are raging and they want to start exploring their sexuality. More of them are not going to wait than are. So at least give them a backup plan that if they choose not to, they can at least be safe about it. Because while I may not want my children to engage in sex too early, while I may not want my children to become pregnant too early or get someone pregnant too early, more than I don't want that, I don't want my children to get, any of my kids to get an STD. More than that, I don't want them to potentially have their lives ruined by contracting something that is not curable or that could potentially kill them. Because I think that's irresponsible. And I think that we are responsible for protecting our children until they get out into the real world and can protect and defend themselves. And even then, it's still my job as a parent to be that backup protection. And I don't care, quite frankly, when it comes to this particular topic, what any old school parent thought as it pertains to sex and educating your kids and actually being willing to let them have that information and not trying to shelter them too long. I don't agree with it. I think that it's detrimental. I think that it's delusional in the world that we live in today. It's like my theory is you can't try to be an angel in a room full of demons. You're just going to get fucking eaten alive. And at the same time, it's like you want to do right. You want to walk the right path. You want to teach your kids to do that always. And it starts young. You can't start at 13 and 14 and 15. You have to start from the beginning, instilling those qualities in them for the girls, that they have that self-esteem, that they don't have those self-conscious issues and those, self-image issues where they seek attention because they feel like the only way to have validation is to go out and have sex with boys. And you also want to teach your sons when they're young, from the time that they are young until they get into those years, how important it is to engage in those types of activities with girls, because there's a whole different level of emotion and mental shit that comes in with that. And if you start young, and then if you provide the information and provide backup plan and provide education on how to do things safely, I believe that that's the most well-rounded and balanced approach you can possibly take. And I'm of the belief, because I made the decision myself and a lot of other people I know did, I'm of the belief that if you provide all of those different angles and all those different bases are covered, then I believe our kids will, in certain situations, make the right choices. I believe they will. And I will give my kids the same benefit of the doubt that I did not get from my parents. And that's just how I feel about it. Anyway, man, like, comment, and subscribe. Again, I hope y'all all had a happy and safe Thanksgiving. We back to these videos and these blogs. I'm trying to close the year out strong. So if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so now, because these are the types of issues that we discuss on this channel. It's about relationships, life. It's about sex. It's about children, being a parent. It's about any and everything you could possibly deal with, think of, or have dealt with or gone through yourself. So please comment on any topic or blog that's on this platform. I'm happy to engage and have the discussion with you respectfully. If you have an idea for something you want to talk about or something that you've talked about and maybe want my feedback on, or we can go back and forth on, hit me up at straighttalk315 at Gmail. If you want to do a live stream or blog with me, or if you just want me to talk about something as people have requested in the past, I will 100% pull up. When I do, be ready. And subscribe to the channel and stick around for a while, because I fuck with this content, and this content is here for you all to fuck with it too. Anyway, I don't pretend to know everything. I just know what I know. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what y'all think about this one, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.